Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Tuesday and welcome back to Pagan Problems. Let's chat for a few minutes about social media. It has proven to be a double-edged sword for pretty much everyone, hasn't it? Because on the one hand, it has connected people of like interest who may have otherwise never have met. It's extended the scope of public conversation, and it has provided us new tools to help us keep in touch with friends and relatives who happen to live far away from us. But on the other hand, social media has been used to wreak absolute havoc in society. So experience has taught us that this is a tool that must be handled with care. But despite all the drawbacks, it is a tool that pagans need to know how to use so we can best suit our own spiritual purposes. Everyone else is using it to get their message out there. There's no reason why we should hamstring ourselves and not do the same. Because without the internet and without social media specifically, far fewer people would even be aware of the revival of pagan religions. Fewer people would be discovering their ancestral gods and their spiritual path, and fewer pagans would have the opportunity to speak up and demonstrate that they are reasonable members of society. Pagans have used social media as a tool to connect with those who are of spiritual like mind, as a means to educate both seekers and the public in general, and also as a means to defend pagan faiths and pagan practices against prejudice, detractors, and those who misrepresent us and our ideas. Now, without a doubt, in an ideal world, our growing pagan community would be comprised of people who shared the same geographical area. That's how it worked with our ancestors. It would be nice if it worked for us that today. However, many of us are not so fortunate to live close by to one another. And then, of course, with all of the political and social issue divides we have in our country, just because you have pagans nearby to you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they align with your values. There has been a lot of twisting within pagan faiths that have gone on really since the 60s, and we're dealing with the consequences of that. So that means we are faced with a very simple choice. Do we go ahead and use the internet to try to forge pagan community in hopes that it will eventually evolve and grow into better things? Or do we just surrender, just say, I'm always going to be lonely, and then just wallow in our isolation? That doesn't sound very appealing to me. I don't know about you. I mean, I'm not exactly the most people-y person in the world. However, I don't think that absolute loneliness and being a hermit throughout your entire spiritual life is necessarily an ideal state of affairs. I mean, just think about it. If you are totally solitary for all of your spiritual life, then you are also limiting your capacity to learn and grow in your path because no one's challenging you. You aren't necessarily coming across new information that might really spark some internal meditations and thought. And sometimes it's just helpful, especially if we feel a bit at loose ends or that we're not sure what to do or how to do it. It's nice to have someone else's brain to pick, to consult with them and just have the benefit of their experience. And that's essentially the argument in favor of making use of the internet and social media specifically for pagan community building. It's an acknowledgement that our circumstances are not ideal. So we're going to make the best of things, and it's better to have some form of community than to be totally atomized. It's also far less vulnerable if we at least have some kind of spiritual support system. So the question then becomes, what kind of platform will best suit our needs? If we're going to form community, that's going to be more than just, meeting up every now and again to discuss specific topics. It's about more than just having a place to dump information and get a couple of likes. I mean, there needs to be a social aspect to this as well, and that means real conversation, going back and forth, getting acquainted with people. And thus far, at least in my own experience, what has been most successful has been platforms like Discord and Gilded. Now, before Discord was nuked back in July for reasons that still haven't been made clear to me by Discord itself, it was actually working very well. People could have those real-time conversations. We could get together and have voice and video and be able to have a real exchange. It really put a more humanized aspect to social media, which honestly other kinds of platforms are really lacking. But even though we don't have our Discord anymore, we do have Gilded, and I'm happy to say that our little community is growing. It functions in a very similar way. We have those text channels where people can, type back and forth, converse in real time, as well as, share the links, post the content, propose conversation starters. But we also have voice channels, and at some point, once I get all of the little tech issues dealt with, I would also hope that we have video channels so we can speak more directly, so we can be as face to face as what's possible and in a digital setting. And social media, for other uses, is also ideal for education about paganism and witchcraft. Now, I wish it was otherwise. I'm sure we all wish our circumstances were different. But the reality is that money is getting tight for everybody. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. And there's a growing number of people who are wanting to pursue their spirituality, but are in absolutely no position to go out and buy a bunch of books. And they don't always have the time or necessarily the gas money to go and visit the local library and see what they have. So because of this, people are turning more so to social media or anything that they can get for free. We have websites and blogs that are in common use, but if we're going to be realistic, I think it's most likely that videos are going to be our best tool as a means of disseminating information and getting people started. And there is a growing number of people who are much more likely to click on a video than to go to a website and read. Depending on what's said on the video and whether or not that resonates with the watcher, it may later determine whether or not someone does go to the effort of further research. Are they really going to go deeper? Are they going to decide, that I think it is worth investing some time and money in this? And then they do go out and they get books, and they do go out and they examine our source material and our lore. It could make all the difference in the world. So I think this is an important avenue for us to continue to explore. Now, as always, when it comes to disseminating information, the trouble begins with how can we tell for ourselves, and how can we explain to new people how we can distinguish good information from bad, whether we are dealing with videos or blogs, websites, magazine articles, books, or even translations of the lore itself. We are always going to be contending with this question. We're always going to be dealing with bias of one kind or another. And this includes reading our myths, because let's face it, the myths were by and large recorded by Christian monks. Christian monks did not have the motivation or the desire to preserve pagan worship, culture, and lifestyle. They were there to replace what was. The fact that they recorded anything at all, I think, really comes down to divine intervention. I really do. So, in view of that, what measuring stick can we use to test the validity of ideas? Now, I would propose, and this is just my idea, and I hope it will begin a larger conversation, so please share your thoughts with me. But I think we can find our answer in nature itself. What is or is not possible is determined by natural law that we are all bound by. And that natural law, what exists within it and what is possible within it, is an objective reality that continues to exist regardless of our hopes or our fears, our personal preferences, or whatever ideology happens to be fashionable at any given time. So if a pagan content creator is making a statement, we can look for the principle upon which that statement is based, and then we can look to see if we find that same principle existing and in action in the natural world, and with what result. And this includes even human behavior. We sometimes lose sight of this, but our own behavioral and our impulses, this is also part of that natural world. But then from there, we can examine if what's being said is logically consistent with other commonly understood and accepted pagan principles. And the further you get into your path, the more you will see how things do fit together. And if something isn't fitting, then maybe there's something you weren't previously aware of that now you're needing to wrestle with. Maybe there was a factor that you haven't fully accounted for, or maybe what's being said isn't actually so. And figuring out that deed requires deep meditation, practical experience, and being willing to look for answers that you can't just Google. You're going to have to put in the work. There's just no substitute for it. Now, social media also provides pagans a platform upon which we can mount an effective defense of our beliefs and practices. The disapproval we may face today is absolutely nothing compared to what pagans experienced a generation ago. And we have the advantage of being able to reach a broader audience thanks to social media platforms, and it can be immediate. We can upload our content. The message can get out. If we do a good job, hopefully people will share it and word will spread and people will actually look. Now, this is important for long-term survival and for the long-term thriving of paganism. It needs to be known what it is we stand for, how we conduct our affairs, and what being pagan actually means. We have centuries of propaganda to overcome, as well as we need to overcome the consequences of people in society in general feeling attacked for their beliefs, whatever their beliefs happen to be. What this has led to is people feeling always on guard, always expecting criticism, and that tends to close the mind. It makes people much less willing to entertain the idea that people can believe something different from them, but that difference won't actually constitute a threat. It's not going to interfere with their beliefs and their practices. So we have a lot to do with. It's our duty to do so. I think this duty goes beyond pagans in general. We are having to re-knit this particular fabric of society. And as I have said many times before, and I will again, no doubt, we have got to distance ourselves and distinguish ourselves from all the people who use paganism as an aesthetic only, or as a means to shock people, or from the people who distort its teachings to give a false impression that it's compatible with or that it's an expression of leftist politics. Nothing could be farther from the truth. And I think we have gone beyond the stage of, well, that's just a different opinion that someone has. I think we are well into the territory of what so-and-so attention-seeking ideologue is saying and doing actually contradicts pagan principles on multiple levels, and let me explain why. Now, acknowledging all of this is not about creating new divisions. We certainly don't need any more of those, but it is about recognizing existing divisions for what they are and understanding that sometimes what someone is saying and what paganism actually is are mutually exclusive. And I know that pagans have an allergic reaction to that idea on basic principle. I get it. Like many of you, I have been given spiritual ultimatums in my time. Very much of an either you can do this or you can hang around everyone else. So I get it. And it isn't a good feeling to contemplate saying that, XYZ puts someone claiming to be pagan beyond the pale and they're no longer part of the club. That's not a fun place to be at. But we can't go on in this juvenile fantasy that it can be morphed into whatever and however you want it to be, and it can still actually be paganism. That really isn't the case. And the deeper we go into our studies, I think the more our source material really makes that clear. So we can't allow our bad personal experiences prevent us from acknowledging when ideas veer away from and actively contradict pagan principles. It's something we're going to have to learn to deal with. It's a necessary debate to have, and it's to our benefit, at least in the long run, to have these conversations. It clarifies our personal thinking, it gives other pagans something to contemplate, and it provides a better impression to non-pagans with whom we share this world. They can see for themselves that we're not all walking in lockstep. We are testing out ideas, we are discussing them, we're getting to the bottom of things, and that we don't like being misrepresented any more than they do. That forms the basis of some common ground. Now, in the description box of every video, I provide information about all the places where my content can be found, and it's quite the list of platforms, and I'm not on any of them for my own pleasure or to satisfy my Leo's sense of vanity. If we did not live in such disturbed times and there wasn't such an overwhelming need to speak up and to take measures to avoid being silenced, I would probably just have one little video channel where I would talk pretty low-key about pagan ideas, and I would probably have the Gilded group, and I would just drop everything else. If we did not live in such a profoundly unstable society, and I actually had a few pagans local to myself to hang out with, I would probably dispense with social media altogether and be glad about it and never look back again. However, we are not in ideal circumstances, and each platform I'm on serves a purpose. And there is redundancy because you can't trust these platforms, not even the ones that are claiming to be free speech oriented. Never put your eggs all in one basket. I think that's been the lesson the past couple of years. So first and foremost, of course, is Gilded, and I am still investigating alternative sites just in case we have another unfortunate incident like what happened on Discord. So I am keeping my eyes and ears open for that. But right now we have Gilded, and this is where myself and other members are knitting together a community. And whether we're getting into those deeper spiritual discussions or we're just visiting with each other, Gilded is where things are happening on a daily basis. People are getting acquainted. They're getting connected with other pagan content creators, and they're able to have discussions without being attacked for not being leftist. And we're able to discuss current events and commentary on our own terms. We also have weekly voice chats. Some of these are focused on particular subjects, and some are just to hang out and talk and just, visit. And these conversations, even the ones that are very casual and low key, they can be incredibly deep. There's been some real insight and some real meaning as we've gotten deeper in some of our conversations. And these are the conversations that really bring people together. Now, secondary to the Gilded group are, of course, the video platforms. Currently, I am on YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. Obviously, YouTube can't be trusted. And if you enjoy my content and you haven't already, please go on to either BitChute, Rumble, or Odyssey. Subscribe there just in case. Even if you don't, that's not where you usually watch my videos. Just having that as backup in case, probably not the worst idea. Now, I am starting to have a pretty decent library of videos on a variety of pagan subjects, and I'm also looking to do more collaborations with other pagans to have more long-form conversations about deeper spiritual subjects as well as about current events, anything that is going on in the world that we think is important, it matters, and we want to react to it. We should have better than just surface level content from people who are, pagan in name only. And we deserve better than to have commentary and analysis about political and current events from sources that don't take a pagan worldview into account. So instead of waiting for someone else to take up the mantle, I'm doing what I can. I'm trying to make those important conversations happen, and hopefully more people will join in that effort. And so the people who are actually good at this sort of thing can take more of a lead in this particular charge. But until that happens, I will continue to do my little bit where I'm at. Now, my tertiary effort is on platforms like Gab, Getter, Locals, MeWe, Minds, and Truth Social. On these platforms, I'm creating what I call pockets of paganism. Every day I'll have a little post, good morning, that has something seasonal and frilly on it. I'll have the day's astrology. I'll have a tarot card reading. I'll put forth a magical correspondence, and I'll have the day's video links. And I do this, firstly, to get a foothold on alternative platforms and ensure that there is a pagan presence. Secondly, as a means to give pagans who are looking for other pagans on these platforms someone and something to find. And thirdly, this is a means to redirect people to the Gilded group, where they ultimately have a much better chance networking and making friends with other pagans, which is what this is all about. And thankfully, I'm not the only pagan out there who is attempting this kind of outreach. And the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned, because it means that we are all finding our way to communities where we can feel comfortable. There's more than one oasis we can turn to, which means we have options. And it's going to be harder and harder for people and groups to find themselves canceled. Censorship in the tech world is running rampant, and pagans are affected just like everybody else. And we can't just lie down and take it and expect anything to get better. We've got to build, and that involves making use of all of the tools we have at our disposal. So to everyone who's saying, this is a lot of work, and, content and community outreach, it sounds like a damn nuisance with absolutely no guarantee of success. And I 100% hear you, understand, and I agree. But my question to you, anyone who might be thinking that, is what's the alternative? If we wait for someone else to do the work, someone else to come and save us and make inroads for paganism, that just doesn't strike me as a winning strategy. It seems like a way to try to get ourselves out of a duty that has been imposed upon our generation. I think it's up to us to create the world that we want to live in and the kind of world that we'd like the next generation of pagans to inherit. So I hope you'll join me in getting busy, using social media for something useful for the pagan community, and aid in the efforts to build that community so that we can be a more visible part of society, where we can be a bit more accepted part of society. And so, of course, so we can find each other. So that's what I have to say on that. Please leave your thoughts for me in the comments section below, or better yet, come and join me on Gilded, as I have been repeatedly inviting you. The link to join us is, as I mentioned before, in the description box. Click on the link. It'll take you to us there. I try to make sure that I'm around enough to where I can greet people pretty quickly after they initially join. Of course, obviously, during the middle of the night, I'm asleep, so that won't happen. But for most hours of the day, for a good bit of the evening, I try to keep my eye on things to make sure that if someone new comes in, that I'm there. I can say hello. I can give them a hand navigating the site if they need it, and just to start that process of getting getting acquainted, finding out what their interests are, how did they get started on a pagan path, where are they wanting to take this next, and even to be able to connect them with other group members who have spiritual paths that align more closely to their own, because we are starting to have a community of people who are on a variety of tracks. We do have a Thelemite, we have a Druid, we have quite a number of witches. We have me who's focusing more and more on Norse spirituality. We have people who are interested in Slavic spirituality and Egyptian and Greek and all of this other stuff. We are starting to have people who are specializing in things that if you are also starting to explore those areas of paganism, you have someone you can talk to, connect with, and again, just be able to pick their brain, have conversations with, and hopefully, ultimately, that'll be helpful to you on your way. So I hope you will come and see us soon, but that will do it for this very long video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.